Welcome, where curiosity leads and knowledge follows. Today, we're asking a question on the minds of economists, investors, and leaders worldwide. Will the US dollar lose its global dominance in 2025? The US dollar has been the backbone of international trade, finance, and power for nearly a century. It's the world's reserve currency, trusted across borders and oceans. But in today's fast-changing world, with rising inflation, growing debt, shifting alliances, and new digital currencies, some experts are warning that the dollar's reign could be coming to an end. What would that mean for America, for the global economy, for you? In this video, we're breaking down the forces at play, the signs you need to watch for, and what the future could hold if the dollar's dominance slips away. Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll know more than most. Let's get into it. In the interconnected world of global finance, interest rates are far more than just numbers set by central banks. They are powerful levers that shape the flow of capital across borders, influence economic growth, and even determine the fate of entire nations. In recent years, a phenomenon often described as global interest rate wars has emerged, as central banks around the world compete to attract capital and stimulate their economies. But what does this competition look like? Why do central banks engage in it, and what are the consequences for economies, businesses, and everyday people? To understand the dynamics at play, it's important to start with a basic question: why do interest rates matter so much? At its core, an interest rate is the price of borrowing money. When a central bank sets its policy rate, it influences how expensive or cheap it is for banks, businesses, and consumers to get loans. Lower rates make borrowing easier, encouraging investment and spending. Higher rates do the opposite, cooling off the economy and curbing inflation. But in a globalized world, these decisions don't just affect one country. They ripple out, influencing the movement of trillions of dollars across borders. Imagine a world where every central bank sets its interest rate in isolation, focusing only on domestic concerns. In reality, though, capital is highly mobile. Investors are constantly searching for the best returns, moving their money from one country to another in pursuit of higher yields. When a central bank raises its rates, it can attract foreign capital, strengthening its currency and potentially boosting investment. But if too many countries do this at once, or if some move much faster than others, it can set off a global contest, a war of interest rates. The roots of the current interest rate competition can be traced back to the global financial crisis of 2008. In the aftermath, central banks slashed rates to historic lows and launched massive programs to inject money into their economies. For years, rates hovered near zero in much of the developed world, creating a search for yield that sent capital flowing into emerging markets and riskier assets. But as economies recovered and inflation began to rise, the tide turned. Central banks, led by the US Federal Reserve, began to hike rates, triggering a new era of competition. The United States, with its large and liquid financial markets, often sets the tone for global interest rates. When the Federal Reserve raises its policy rate, it tends to attract capital from around the world, strengthening the dollar and making it harder for other countries to compete. Emerging markets, in particular, can be hit hard. Capital outflows can weaken their currencies, fuel inflation, and force their own central banks to raise rates to defend their economies, even if domestic conditions don't warrant it. This dynamic creates a delicate balancing act. On the one hand, central banks want to keep rates low to support growth and employment. On the other hand, if their rates are too low compared to global peers, they risk losing capital, seeing their currencies depreciate, and importing inflation. The result is a complex game of strategy, where each central bank must weigh domestic needs against global realities. In recent years, this competition has become even more pronounced. As inflation surged in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, central banks around the world were forced to act. The Federal Reserve embarked on one of its fastest tightening cycles in decades, pushing rates to multi-decade highs. The European Central Bank, the Bank of England, and others followed suit, often reluctantly, as they struggled to keep pace and prevent capital flight. But not all countries have the same room to maneuver. For smaller or emerging economies, raising rates too quickly can choke off growth, while keeping them too low can trigger a currency crisis. Some countries, like Turkey and Argentina, have faced severe economic turmoil as they tried to balance these competing pressures. Others, like Japan, have maintained ultra-low rates, betting that their unique economic circumstances justify a different approach, even as this puts pressure on their currencies and financial systems. The consequences of these global rate wars are far-reaching. For investors, they create opportunities and risks, as capital flows shift rapidly in response to changing yields. For businesses, they influence borrowing costs, investment decisions, and even the stability of supply chains. For consumers, they affect everything from mortgage rates to the prices of imported goods. But perhaps the most profound impact is on the stability of the global financial system itself. Rapid shifts in capital flows can destabilize economies, trigger financial crises, and force abrupt policy changes. Countries with high levels of dollar-denominated debt are particularly vulnerable, as a stronger dollar can make it much harder to service those obligations. In extreme cases, interest rate wars can even spill over into broader geopolitical tensions, as countries accuse each other of manipulating their currencies or pursuing beggar-thy-neighbor policies. So what can be done to manage these challenges? Some experts argue for greater coordination among central banks, pointing to past successes like the Plaza Accord of the 1980s, when major economies worked together to stabilize exchange rates. Others believe that more flexible exchange rates and stronger financial regulations can help countries weather the storms created by global capital flows. Ultimately, though, the reality is that interest rate wars are likely to remain a feature of the global economy for the foreseeable future. As long as capital is mobile and economies are interconnected, central banks will have to navigate the complex interplay between domestic needs and global pressures. The stakes are high, not just for policymakers and investors, but for everyone whose livelihood depends on the stability and prosperity of the world economy. In this environment, understanding the dynamics of global interest rate competition is more important than ever. It's a story of power and vulnerability, of opportunity and risk, played out every day in the decisions of central bankers and the movements of markets. As the world continues to grapple with inflation, growth, and uncertainty, the interest rate wars will shape the path ahead, reminding us that in the global economy, no nation is an island, and every decision echoes far beyond its borders. Don't forget to subscribe. Knowledge is power, and you're building yours right here on Know It Now. If you're ready to keep growing, like, subscribe, and let's keep exploring together.